Welcome to the Grappling Grappling Rewind Podcast.
Welcome to this week on the Grappling Rewind Podcast. In this week's show, we're going to recap a little bit about the Brasileiros, the Brazilian Nationals, some select matches from the men's finals, talk a little about some of the women's matches as well. We are going to recap One FC in Denver. That was Mikey Musumeci versus Osama Almeri. We're also going to talk about Ruotolo versus De Ritter on that card as well. I actually flew out to Denver to go and see that. We're going to talk about Fight to Win, Josh Cisneros versus Sam Nagai on Fight to Win 227. And
SOGI.
And SOGI, Kenta Iwamoto versus Keith Krikorian. As always on the show, I'm your host, Maine, to my co-host,
Miranda.
That was a good intro.
Yeah.
I nailed it.
You nailed it without even looking at notes. You nailed it.
Almost 300 episodes. At this point, I would hope that I got that. So big week for me. Coming back from the previous week, last week's show I talked about doing judging for ADCC at the Costa Mesa Open. Then I flew from LA to Denver to home to work Monday and then fly back out to Denver for my wife and I's birthday for vacation to go watch One FC live. Got to watch that whole Denver card. First time One FC came to America. It lived up to the hype.
Yeah, and you took a picture with the nice with the
26-pound belt for One FC that Mikey Musumeci retained.
Yeah.
And got a $50,000 bonus in what I believe was a hot fire match and enjoyed the shit out of.
I was not on the same receiving end of that. But
you had some thoughts. You'll talk about them in a minute here. So that's been my week. I'm very jet lagged, even though it's only like a 2-hour difference from us for time. But
no, but it messes with your head.
But the week of flying back and forth across the country like twice, I am very much not used to that.
You would not do well with the travel lifestyle.
Yeah, and then I went to a Daniel Kelly seminar at Novamente out in Colorado. That was phenomenal. She was out there for One FC, so my wife and I got to do a seminar with her. Super 115-pound woman, super strong. She used me as like the uke for a bunch of the demonstrations. She has incredible squeeze on everything. Been doing the sport a long time. It was probably the tightest triangle anyone has ever demoed on me. I was astonished. So we'll talk about that.
Did she put you out?
Almost. I thought she was going to break a blood vessel in my eye.
Okay.
It was. In the demo, I'm just struggling to not tap while she talks through the technique for like a Dars, for an Anaconda, for a bunch of triangle, a couple of different techniques she showed. But phenomenal to go out there to Denver, train with Troy from Novamente. She was out there. I got to teach a class at Troy's gym. That was great. So overall, great trip. Super out of shape for Denver.
Did you teach guillotines?
I just taught knee bars.
Oh, okay. I was like, knee bars or guillotines?
Knee bars or guillotines, just taught knee bars. Yeah. So it was a great trip. We'll talk a little more in the outro. But yeah, overall, a great week. Very jet lagged, but some phenomenal match. I got to go and watch One FC live. Haven't been to a live fight, like a major, other than the local ones we have here, a major live fight in probably in a couple of years.
Yeah,
it's been
me
probably
too.
5+ years since I've been to like a UFC or something like that. So
I think the last UFC fight I went to was in Baltimore.
That would have been like 10 years ago. That was Jones and Glover.
Yeah.
And that would have been...
I think that was the last time I went to...
That might have been 2015.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I used to go every year. Like once a year I would go see a...
Now it's just grappling.
Yeah. Now it's just grappling.
So, in grappling news... kind of the biggest news. So next weekend we have the ADCC Denver Open.
Yep.
There are some big names that are announced for that, like John Hansen's going out to that. There's a big list that came out of both men's competitors and women's competitors. And you look at that list, you're like, oh, these are like pro top-level people that are going to this Open. Oh, the ADCC Opens are the real deal. And people on the pro scene are coming in to be there to go and compete for the experience at the ADCC rules, but also because they're big major tournaments, even only being the second one they're running in the United States.
Yeah.
So that's this weekend in Denver. That's big news. In other grappling news, Mark Zuckerberg competed in jiu-jitsu and took, gold and silver?
Yeah, gold and silver.
Not really related to pro news, but...
No, but one day if you are in California and you're maybe white belt, early blue belt, you might get a match against Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, that's crazy.
He could just randomly show up in your bracket.
That kind of speaks to the not the broad appeal, but the amount of people that are in the sport
now.
Yeah,
and he had pretty decent jiu-jitsu. This wasn't like the I only do privates jiu-jitsu where you're like, oh, you're a.
Well, you see it and you're like, not quite sure. It looked like competent white belt jiu-jitsu, and you find his matches online. We're not gonna cover it.
The stand-up was kind of hilarious because they did like the white belt smacking hands thing where they don't like grab a hold of each other; they just kind of smack each other's hands away.
But considering Mark's probably aside from some royalty, the richest dude to ever do jiu-jitsu. That's crazy. Like to have a modern billionaire go out and compete in like a local tournament.
Yeah.
It speaks to the growth that the sport has had. That was not a thing 5 years ago.
And it's good for the sport. It really is. It brings another group of people looking at it that probably wouldn't have looked at it before.
Mm-hmm. So this billionaire Mark does jiu-jitsu and went out and competed. Oh, maybe this is a sport that I'm interested in.
Maybe he can put money into something. Make
the Facebook Open, the Metaverse Open.
Dude, I'd do the Facebook Open. Why not?
I would do the Facebook Open too, just for the memes, just
for the shits and giggles.
So that's any other news this week?
No, I've
just been in Denver.
I don't think anything else. There was a couple other opens, like IBJJF opens throughout the country, but
Brasileiros was the big one.
The big one.
And luckily, actually had some good footage from Brasileiros this year.
Yeah, they had all the cameras set up. All the matches I watched, they were pretty decent. Definitely had some reffing issues throughout the entire event, which
I hate that's
interesting.
That's the theme we have. There's a weird. We're gonna talk about two kind of matches that have reffing issues. The Tyne and Daupra match.
And the thing is, but even besides that, like I want to say it was, somebody posted today, and they were posting about like this really weird takedown sequence that really wasn't a normal one, but it should have gotten 2 and it didn't get 2. So there's multiple issues where people were not kind of getting the points that they should have.
I think IBJJF. So do you want to do IBJJF first?
Yeah, okay, because we're already there.
We're already there. So let's move into the recap for the couple matches we're going to cover for Brasileiros.
Yeah.
IBJJF is changing their rules and changing the way that they are enforcing their rules and doing their scoring, and they're kind of doing it in real time. And we have seen since essentially right around Leandro's death, we saw them implement a bunch of rules right before that.
But the rules they implemented before that, wasn't that just for the super fights?
They implemented those rules, but there's also a collection of other rules they implemented for regular events that were basically they were going to have stricter enforcement of stalling. And we've been seeing them enforce the borders a lot less. And so we saw them we're seeing IBJJF essentially kind of follow some of the lead that we're seeing from ADCC and from AJP and UAEJJF in the way that they are handling stalling and the way that they're handling the edge of the mat and border control for like the black belt matches, and that, hey man, the border, if there's some space, we will let you play outside of the yellow line a little bit before we call it. Hey, if you're not, in the case of the Tyne match here, if you are in a dominant position and you are not and up on points and not actively working towards progressing your position,
which I think we're both not agreeing on that, because I think he was still actively progressing.
I think it was quick.
Yeah.
But I can see the argument. But I just think in IBJJF we are very much. So let's talk about the sequence here. So Tyne and Daupra does Tyne and Daupra things, looks amazing throughout the entire weekend.
But we also have to remember he's not like his Jonathan Gracie, who just kind of like chills.
He's got a pace to him.
Yeah, he still keeps a pace. It's not like he's...
Jonathan Alves is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
He doesn't keep a pace.
Yeah.
So Tyne and Daupra, he has an amazing submission earlier in the day. I think it was the quarterfinals or semifinals, where he does essentially he does the thing he did at Pans. Or he did
it was one of his earlier matches. Yeah.
He did that gator roll thing where he grabs on the collar and he grabs at the pants, and then he does a gator roll.
Ducks his head and kind of rolls through.
And then as his opponent goes to turtle, he gets an armbar off of the gator roll.
Yeah.
Which is
phenomenal.
Wild. And he's the only guy I've ever seen do that, and now he's done it twice.
Yeah.
But in his finals match, who's he against in his finals?
He's going against Pedro Henrique Maya.
Yeah. In his finals match with Pedro Maya, he's on the back with the body triangle. And before you kind of get into the discussion of the technique, IBJJF doesn't like the body triangle.
Yeah.
They see it as like a stalling position.
Well, because once you're stuck there, it's very difficult to get out of it.
There's a lot of movement.
Unless you're a Krikorian, which we'll talk about later.
Dude, and SOGI, he that dude's amazing to get out of the body triangle. But specifically from the guard, it's one of the few places in kind of the older IBJJF rule set that if you were to lock a body triangle from the guard, they would call the bottom player for stalling. So IBJJF has historically been in an even match, they score for the guard player. Like and then we've seen since really 2018 that's really started to shift, and IBJJF has, slowly and begrudgingly begun to modernize. They're adding heel hooks. They've added less strict enforcement on the border. They've added disengagement rules. Yeah. They've added more aggressive stalling penalties. And at least because we watch so many different rule sets, I kind of remember at a point in time with IBJJF where it's like you had an egregious amount of time to sit in spots and kind of do nothing before they would even consider calling you for stalling, especially at the black belt levels. Yeah. That has changed. And IBJJF doesn't see the back triangle. They don't score body triangle like ADCC does, like other organizations score the body triangle. But they also don't see it as like... It's not really back control to them because the only thing that scores in IBJJF is 2 hooks in and a seatbelt.
Which he had
earlier.
Yeah, he had earlier.
But Tynan, because the body triangle for many things you want to do is better control, especially in the gi, you go to the body triangle.
And because Pedro was picking him up in the air. So it was easier for him to maintain the back, especially up in the air. If he had the triangle.
Again, Tynan made a good tactical decision to like, hey, I've got my points. I don't need to stay in this hooked position in the legs. Yeah. I can move to the body triangle here and then maintain my position on the back and start working for the choke at whatever speed I need to. So I watched the side angle of this.
Yeah.
Like, you watched the flow zone mat angle.
The flow zone was the one, because I watched it live, and that was from like the flow zone angle, which was the other angle. And what it was what I saw was Tynan was trying to get the grips that he wanted for whatever choke he was going for. And the Pedro was defending.
He was grabbing his hands a lot.
Yeah, and there was a lot of like hand fighting, but there was active hand fighting going on with Tynan having dude in a freaking body triangle. And I never heard, but maybe there was a warning before it started. But then next thing you know, Tynan gets a penalty.
Well, IBJJF doesn't give... they don't give verbal warnings, correct?
I know they do for lower belts. I don't know about black belts. Lower belts, they do give you a warning. Okay. And I think some black belts, they do.
I'm used to ADCC where it's it is active.
I've seen they give you, they say something before they do it. I want to say they generally do that, but I could be completely wrong.
ADCC, we just yell action at you, and it gets people moving.
Well, yeah. When I ref for good fight, I scream at people too. So, you got to start moving.
So basically, Pedro has Tynan's hands, and Tynan is kind of in a grip position on the back. He at one point has a lower lapel, like an underhook lapel grip, and he's fighting the hands, and then he kind of stops for a second, where it's like Pedro has his hand, and Tynan is kind of just going, okay, well, I'm up on points. If you're just going to hold my hand here down and not do anything and not make any effort to escape the back, I'm just going to sit there for a second. So this is what I saw from the angle on the side, which is, again, not the angle you had. And the ref kind of looks, a couple seconds go by, and then hits him with the stalling. Hits him with a penalty in IBJJF, where your first penalty doesn't do anything. Your second penalty in IBJJF gives your opponent an advantage. Your third penalty gives your opponent 2 points. And your fourth penalty disqualifies you and your opponent wins.
So we got the first penalty.
And then
within 10 seconds.
10 seconds. It was
He gets
quick.
the second one, which in my opinion, if you watch him, his hands are moving. So he's trying to do something. If somebody's holding your fucking hands, what are you supposed to do at that point? You're supposed to let go of your body triangle?
Yeah,
you really going to do that?
It was a weird call. I'll definitely give you it was a weird call.
The first one, okay, maybe I can agree with that. Maybe. Yeah. I don't agree with it, but I could, maybe see something. The second one, dude's trying something and the other guy's not the other guy's not trying to get out.
Right.
And dude, you're losing. Why the fuck aren't you trying to get out?
I've watched a lot of IBJJF. We've been doing the show for close to 6 years at this point. Yeah. I've watched a lot of IBJJF matches. I've watched a lot of IBJJF finals. Yeah. I think this is probably, and I'm not trying to be, not facetious is the right word, hyperbole. I think this is probably the fastest I've ever seen someone recalled for stalling in the same position.
Well, then after the second one, Tynan just
Tynan was like, all right, we gotta go. Apparently,
turns that shit on immediately.
Didn't end up getting the sub. They reset the position. Pedro did a good job trying to get him off, but it's, they reset with 7 seconds left, and the match finishes and Tynan takes it. It was personally, I actually really like this call, but I think it is weird because it is not consistent.
So it's 20 seconds because the first one was at 110 left and the second one was at 40 left.
Was it that slow?
So it was 20 seconds between.
It felt like 10, 15 seconds.
Yeah,
it felt extremely
I actually
quick.
wrote it down. As weird as that's how freaking neurotic I am about certain things.
It was very quick. It felt
super
weirdly
quick.
Which again, 20 seconds is the criteria for a lot of those calls.
Yeah.
I thought he was doing something in that time.
Yeah.
And from the time you penalized again, it was for IBJJF very quick.
Yeah.
I think that personally, it's good.
Yeah.
Moving toward if you're in a position and not doing, or basically the argument here is there's two arguments. One, do you think they should hand out penalties this quickly?
Yeah.
And two, do you think Tynan was doing something? I think those are two separate arguments.
I think Tynan was doing something. One.
Yeah.
So I can kind of get it if once I was explained that the body triangle isn't considered the back position, then I can kind of in my mind justify the first one because
it's not considered by IBJJF, but for everyone else, we all consider it back.
But I can kind of see the first one. The second one I think was hasty, and then at that point he kind of turned it on because at that point he would have lost.
You would have given your opponent 2 points, which would have evened the score up, but his opponent had more advantages.
Yeah.
So
he would have lost, and that would have been crazy shit because
not
only did Tynan not only did he give up a sweep earlier, which was the 2 points against him. It was more like a guard pull and the guy pushed forward and he got 2 for a takedown. But yeah, it was a bizarre matter of events. But then I think once they reset him, I think Tynan jumps to mount or something like that. He gets 4 points at the end.
Yeah, he moves around.
So he moves around at the end and he wins. But it was definitely an interesting series of events, to say the least.
I like that IBJJF is getting more aggressive about stalling because it got really bad for a couple years, and I think a lot of the people that do IBJJF are very used to having at 1 to 2 minutes in the match, especially at the black belt level, where you can kind of just coast and do whatever and not be hit for stalling, and it's a problem.
I think my only issue is if you're in a dominant position, how can they call you on stalling?
But I did it they did it ADCC for Tynan.
Yeah.
I like it. If you're up, I like being called for stalling if you are up on points.
Yeah.
Hey, if you're up on points, you need, and ADCC's justification is you need to be progressing the match to more dominant spots or towards a sub to finish the match. Yeah. You can't just hold a guy's back
sometimes you have a person that's just defending.
Yeah.
And they're defending in a way that they're not opening up.
Yeah.
So what the fuck are you supposed to do at that point?
Supposed to keep working. It's grappling. It's a sport. And so
I mean, what do? You just aggressively then just try to punch choke the
you just keep
and
going.
Just freaking,
and so that's my thought of we're doing a sport. If a guy is defending, it is your job to continue to put up offense if you're in a dominant spot, regardless of the level of defense that you're encountering. Yeah. It's your job because you're up on points. It's, I think, definitely, even among the Grappling Rewind folks, an unpopular opinion in certain positions like in back mount or in mount.
Yeah.
I just am a big fan of hey, you're in a good spot. I want you to keep moving. I'm happy IBJJF is going this direction. Yeah. But I think with calls like this, the problem we've always had about IBJJF is it's really unclear and it's very inconsistent. Yeah. Where it's their rule book is 50, 60 pages long. I think it's 74 pages.
It's really long.
And all the particularities and videos. But the enforcement of them is not necessarily super uniform for these super high-level matches.
Yeah, part of that is also that any brown belt can basically become an IBJJF ref.
Which I think is a good thing.
Which is a good thing. Because when I get a brown belt, I will probably do IBJJF, because why not?
I've been debating it.
You should do it, just for shits and giggles.
Yeah. So that was that match. Tynan wins. Again, remains undefeated in IBJJF competition. Takes the Brazilian Nationals, Brasileiros gold. To no one's surprise, looks phenomenal doing it. Yep. But that was an interesting finals match with some kind of nuance to it. You want to move to the next match with controversy?
Well, the other controversial match will be Thalita Silva versus Elizabeth Clay.
This was semis or quarters?
I don't even know. This was day one. This wasn't even
early in the match. I forget what division it was. For the ladies, but so we watched this. We talked about this. I watched it again. We watched it right before the show.
We don't know what the hell's going on up in here.
Basically, it is a lot of Elizabeth Clay doing what Elizabeth Clay does, which is hunting the legs, hunting the feet. overhooking the legs and going a lot for the belly down ankle lock.
Yeah.
And then looking to bring that up. There's a sweep. There's a re-sweep. It is... This gets weird because the real issue is once you're in this... It's not a 50-50 position, but it's like a variation of an inside leg position for Clay. When they sweep and re-sweep, it's... Because they're not facing each other in some positions at certain times, it is very hard to tell under the new IBJJF rules when you would give points and when you would give advantages. Yeah. So a near sweep in IBJJF has a specific criteria, and I unfortunately don't know the exact verbiage of the criteria.
Yeah.
And basically, if you get someone almost up all the way, most of the way, but you don't settle it all the way, and you get behind their hips, you usually get an advantage for that.
Yeah.
Is my understanding and how I've seen it done. And, in other terms, use IBJJF rules. For a sweep, you need to, especially from 50-50 and from these modified leg positions, you have to come up and you have to put someone on their butt or back.
Yeah.
And then you have to come up and stabilize the position for 3 seconds. Like, you can't be teetering. You have to, with 50-50, you have to have the intent to come up for the advantage and come all the way up through it to get to a position where you have stabilized top position. And there's a weird kind of back and forth that Clay and Thalita have.
And the other thing is that Clay has control of her one leg the entire time.
Yeah.
So it's
for
like even
if
she comes up, technically, I guess you could say that Elizabeth has like an ankle lock position.
I think that when Thalita gets the points, she doesn't have the ankle lock. So I don't really have an issue with the points. I have an issue with what the controversy in the match is. Basically, Clay gets her hand raised, then Thalita remains on the mat. There's a 4 minutes of discussion, and then Thalita is given the match. And there's
on a ref's decision. They make it even
because it was not even, then it was even.
And then they do a ref's decision and Thalita wins.
Yeah, because Clay had gotten an advantage at the end of the match and Thalita had gotten 2 because the match was over, which would then make them even on points, Clay up on advantages, and then there's a big break and there's no audio.
Then they take an advantage away.
Yeah. And Clay posted about it. It's a lot of different places. It was weird.
It's also weird because they're giving the advantages and the points after it's happened. So it's not like you can't watch it and like normally I watch it and I watch the ref, and when the ref like says advantage, like I know that the action prior to that movement is what he's giving it for. But because he gives it at the very end of the match when the match is over.
Because Thalita comes up with 3 seconds left in the match, she gets her. It's weird because she scores, and so what I saw was Thalita scoring the sweep to top with 4 seconds remaining, getting the points, and you can argue did she stabilize it here, did she stabilize it there, but there's 2 points in the match in that last like 15 or 20 seconds where it's like, okay, I could see
I would
her
give
getting
her something
points for that or something for that. And then you give the advantage to Clay at the end when the match is over for whatever Clay had for position or submissions.
Yeah, the submission
at the end of the match, you give an advantage after time expires. So them receiving the points for 2 for the sweep and the advantage at the end makes sense to me. Yeah. But you're kind of left wondering, okay, well, what did she get it for and why did she...
Yeah.
You're left in this weird spot because it's at the end of the match, and then they call it back, and you're like, okay, well, they didn't give it to her at the end of the match. Well, why didn't they give it to her? And so, as a result, Thalita Lima moves on over Elizabeth Clay very controversially when Clay's hand was raised on the mat. As much as we kind of like to go into conspiracies here, you can see it on the ref's face at the end where there is something weird or wrong. He's trying to communicate to the table while the last sequence is happening, and then after the sequence is happening that like something's up with the points.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that there was a point error at some point in something scored that he caught, and then he tried to correct. He raised the hand because that was listed and then corrected it as opposed to correcting it first.
Well, but they also, if you notice, all the refs have like earbuds in. Yeah. And I think they have a table that's then also telling them what's going on. So it's probably a combination of the on the mat ref and the table refs.
But it was definitely weird because you can see Clay at the end of the match look at the scoreboard and go be extremely confused. And like Clay.
Yeah, but Clay, at the one time, like they give Clay 2 points and she gives a look like, what the fuck? And that I don't understand because I'm like, they just gave you 2 points. You shouldn't be unhappy about that. What the fuck? You know?
So
it's weird.
Interesting refereeing, but again, it's unfortunate to have like major female competitors in these matches.
Yeah.
And we're not discussing the technique of the match as much. We're discussing the weirdness of the scoring.
Yeah.
And why there was a 4-minute break where someone else was announced and then came back. And again, a tournament that Elizabeth may very well have or could have won had she moved on. So just unfortunate, but
the other thing, that should be addressed is the fact that there were multiple times that she could have sat up, got her 2, and then won on points and not went balls to the wall on ankle locks and foot locks.
Which it's a
point tournament, so you got to get your points. You can't just think that you can freaking bust through everybody.
I mean, but if you're Elizabeth Clay, there's not many women on the planet that you can't leg lock.
So get your 6 points before you start, so that you have a nice, comfortable lead. You don't have to worry about this bullshit. Yeah. But that's how I've.
Sometimes you get Brazilian in Brazil.
Yeah,
and it was a couple.
There were some Brazilians.
There was definitely some people getting Brazilian this weekend. But as always with Brazilian nationals, you really got to put a stamp on it. And then, we didn't mention the Tynan match at the end. He comes up. And then he double legs the ref for us. He doesn't knock him over, but he touches the legs. And Miranda and I both watched it again.
And we were like, we
would immediately be DQ'd.
Yeah, they would have DQ'd our asses immediately.
The ref kind of laughed, but it was just very. And maybe Tynan knows the ref or something like that. But it was just a very funny. I went, if I were to do that, I would immediately get DQ'd. At
first, I was like, is there something wrong with it? Because the only time I've ever seen that is MMA fights when people go out and then don't realize they went out.
And they start fighting
and
the ref.
And they try to fight the ref. And I was like, is he fighting the ref? And then I was like, nah, he's just
messing around.
Yeah.
So there's a couple other matches on Brasileiros we're going to talk about. Where do you want to start?
We'll go Lucas Pinheiro.
What do they have his name listed as? Lucas Dos Santos?
Dos Santos, yeah. And I think it's Lucas Dos Santos Pinheiro.
Yeah, but they didn't have him listed as Lucas Pinheiro.
No, but it took me forever to try to find this match today, and that's why I realized that it's Lucas Dos Santos. But versus Wellerson, and you have to say the last name.
Goncalves.
Wellerson
Goncalves.
Okay.
So this is the Roosterweight final for the men's division, for the men's final.
Yeah.
And this was a fun back and forth match.
This is the leg jump thing. What did you call it?
What did I call it before the show? I think I called it something I can't say on the air before the show. Basically, so there's a neat moment in this match where you basically have dueling single legs.
Yeah.
Where you have Wellerson and Lucas Pinheiro towards the edge of the mat both do a scissor stand with a single leg for the other guy. So basically, you have Wellerson's leg on Lucas Pinheiro's hip with Lucas having an underhook, and you have Lucas Pinheiro's leg over top of that, or might have Wellerson's leg over top of that, and so you have two guys essentially standing with their legs straight out, with the same side leg, like orthodox side, and then hopping. And usually you see this in 50-50, where you have that double 50-50 stand where they stand up. Yeah. It is super rare to see it.
And they stay for a while up like that. So they bounce around like that. It's like, whoa.
It's such a weird position. So there's some takedowns you can do there, and they're hard to get to because both legs are kind of extended. Both guys aren't really through with the legs. So they're both standing on one leg. The legs are very extended. Because I'm a tiny, small man, you can do this to other tiny small people.
Yeah.
And then what this turns into sometimes is they didn't do it here, but if you haven't never seen this before, this can turn into a leg kicking battle. Yeah. Where you use the leg you're hopping on to try to kick the other guy's leg out while you're doing it. And usually,
could you in theory roll? Could you roll under the legs?
You can do a lot of stuff. You can do a bunch of inverted, but the problem is because they have the overhook on the leg here, they get top position when you roll. And it's also the problem. They get a leg lock or something like that.
And they get two. When they get two?
It depends on if ref ever considers
it
it coming to neutral with one leg standing or not. It'll all kind of depend. But it's just a very funny position we don't see very often. I always like to highlight those moments. And we had this in a heavyweight match a while ago where it happened for a second or two.
Yeah. I can't see heavyweight men doing this for a long period of time. It's
not very common, but it does come up, and it was a neat little sequence. There was also a really cool sequence in this match. The finishing sequence was neat, but there was an earlier sequence. I'm trying to remember what exactly.
Is it the back take? No.
Well, the back take was neat. So in the final sequence, Wellerson kind of turtles, and Lucas
shoulder rolls, right? Is this?
Lucas is going to take Wellerson's back, and it's a little moment that happens when Lucas pulls Wellerson back all the way onto his butt. and Lucas is sitting behind him, normally what happens is guys will kind of chair sit into your back mount, and then you throw your legs in, and then they'll try to roll through.
Yeah.
Wellerson realizes he's getting pulled back by Pinheiro, and instead of chair sitting, he like rolls onto Pinheiro with his shoulders. And so when Lucas goes to throw the hooks in, Wellerson's butt and like legs are still up in the air because he's committed his weight. He's like overcommitted his weight into a direction.
Yeah.
And then you see like the hooks almost try to come in from Lucas, and he's like, oh, he's over rolled this back take. And it was just, it's a little thing you don't see very often, except for at the smaller weights, is like things like that where guys will know where someone's going, and Lucas was trying to take the back, and Wellerson just goes, no, and like overrolls the position to get out of it, and then Lucas eventually turtles him, throws a leg over the shoulder like he's gonna go back triangle or like a really high bow and arrow choke,
like
pulls the leg back out, and then eventually he does finish.
And then he does the same thing over again.
Yeah,
like he does like a belly down.
Who else did this recently? It was a bigger guy.
It was last week.
Was it BJJ Stars?
Somebody did this last week. No, it was. Let me look. I will look.
So the bow and arrow we're talking about is basically, instead of, it's like a belly down bow and arrow, but when they're in the turtle, so you can see the choking hand.
It was BJJ Stars.
And they have the leg completely over the shoulder. The choking person has the leg completely over the shoulder and can just like hip. I thought it was a heavyweight. Was it Mika?
No, I don't think so. I don't know who it was.
Was it? It was BJJ Stars. It was definitely BJJ Stars.
Okay.
And it might have been Anderson got choked, but I don't remember exactly who did it. Regardless, Lucas Pinheiro hits this really nifty modified bow and arrow choke, and I love this bow and arrow choke because in a traditional bow and arrow choke, you have someone typically really, really low. Their back's just almost towards the mat. You throw your outside leg over, and it gives you the pressure to kind of leverage against your own hand to basically tighten up the bow and arrow choke on the neck. With this, because you're over top of their back, you can just like drop your hips down into this position, and it's just brutal. And you saw Goncalves just like rapidly tapping, like and really, really tapping aggressively to get out of the choke. And because you're in that position, your hand can kind of get stuck there, so you get to fall off the choke, off the body, as you're trying to let go of the choke, and it chokes the entire time. Super uncomfortable, but Lucas Pinheiro takes that match and is now the Roosterweight champion. I keep mixing him and Diego Hayes
because I think,
up for divisions.
I think Diego Hayes can be both divisions, right?
Yeah, I think for some reason I think I always want to put him at Rooster. I think this is a me problem. I think I always want to put Diego Hayes at Rooster, but he's actually at light feather. Yeah. So let's talk about that match. I think it's the last Brazilian match we want to talk about is the finals between Diego Hayes and Kleber Souza.
It is. It is.
This was fun as shit.
Yeah, it was. It was a nice back and forth of both playing guard a little bit, both passing a little bit. We get to watch Hayes pick up the speed in his passing.
Yeah.
He kind of always does the crushy pass, but then towards the end, he's like, I'm going to add some flair to this.
Yeah, towards the end, you talked about like he's always warm now.
Yeah.
There was a moment,
he picks
probably 4 or 5 minutes into the match where you just see there's a specific sequence where he does like an outside like flare pass over the legs where he basically rotates like 270 degrees over the guard.
Yeah, it's almost like like a cartwheel, but not really.
It's like a flare.
Yeah.
In breakdancing, it's a flare where you throw your...
See, I know nothing about breakdancing.
Where you throw your hips up and then your pelvis is to the air as you roll through. And Baby Shark uses that to pass over essentially a hook that Kleber Souza is trying to throw to either put him back in the guard or turn him over. There was also a really great moment at the end of the match. It ends on points for Baby Shark, where they're standing and Baby Shark immediately pulls into. I wish the camera angle was better here. Yeah. He pulls into a scissor sweep. Yeah. And just like from the grips, he yanks. They're both standing. He yanks down, and then as soon as they hit the mat, as Souza goes to kind of stabilize himself, Baby Shark has taken his leg and just sweeps him over. Gets 2 more points. And wins 6-2, I think.
Yeah, 6-2.
6-2, but it was just like I love Baby Shark, because in the last sequence there, like, he didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
He didn't have to pull and sweep, and then he's already up with 10 seconds left. He just decides to do that anyway.
Yeah. Well, he was also within 2 before that sequence. He was within 2. So if Kleber actually took him down, which he wasn't able to take him down any time earlier in the match, but for whatever reason, let's say
you could have countered the pull or something like that. So it was just tactically a good decision to keep scoring, to keep that margin at 4 points. Yeah, so that you kind of seal the match for yourself.
But yeah, great performance by both of the gentlemen in that match.
Mm-hmm. This was fun. I like watching Baby Shark. He plays a really, really grindy passing game from the top. And you saw even in this match some of the wrestling come into play. Yeah. Like there was a lot of front headlock positions between both guys, and there was one sequence towards the edge of the mat that I remember seeing where his corner's like calling, get on top of the head, get on top of the head in Portuguese, and you saw Diogo be really, really comfortable wrestling through these positions as Kleber was trying to come forward on him.
And the one time that Kleber grabs a single leg on him, he just kind of like turns. Yeah. I mean,
it's a turnout and a shot reshot.
He does it. Yeah, he does a reshot, and because he does the reshot, he technically doesn't go down at any point. Mm-hmm. So then there's no takedown there.
Yeah, he just it's not a limp leg is what he does, but he does
he does the whole like turn your back and kick out. Yeah, like donkey kick out.
Out of a single leg,
and then he drops his butt for a second, and then he shoots, and he does it fast enough that there's never technically a takedown.
I mean, he's only down for a second.
Yeah, he's not down.
There's no control.
Yeah, he pops back up fast.
But it was something that's the stuff I love seeing in the gi, where it's like, Diogo Reis, ADCC champion under 66, is now bringing the skills that he had to develop in the lower weight classes at light feather from ADCC, from like the no-gi side into the gi, and like, you're seeing guys with better wrestling now in the gi at the black belt divisions in the gi look like they can wrestle and like make these tactical choices that had we not seen the kind of inundation of no-gi and the reliance on wrestling coming to the lower weight classes at ADCC, I don't think that's a sequence we would have seen like tactically chosen from Diogo here. No. And it was just nice to see it like, you just avoided that takedown because you learned how to wrestle, and like you're leveraging that now in your gi matches, and now you're the Brazilian champion in part because you have that adjacent skill set that you can leverage in these matches. So interesting that the guys can wrestle now at the lower weight classes. That is a new fold.
Yeah, it's great. I think it's a good addition into everything. And it made the Brazilians fun to watch. I had a good time watching them.
So there's other matches, but it was a big, big weekend for me, and jet lag hitting hard. So we're not going to cover all the Brazilian national finals. We typically don't. We like to pick from a couple of them. We cover Worlds for gi and no-gi, Euros for gi, Pans for gi and no-gi, and then that's what we cover. And then we touch on Brazilians.
That's all the majors.
Those are all the IBJJF majors that we cover. Where do you want to go next, Miranda?
We will go SOGI.
Let's go to SOGI. We had main event, Kenta Iwamoto versus Keith Krikorian. This was at welterweight. I didn't realize that until watching it. So Kenta Iwamoto, we talked about him last weekend. Yeah. Trials champion for the Oceanic region. Yeah. Keith Krikorian, 3-time silver medalist in trials for the last 3 ADCC trials, and then at the West Coast trials right before ADCC gold medalist, so trials winner. Yeah. So you have 2 trials winners going against each other, but both these guys did, Keith did 66 kilograms ADCC. Yeah. Kenta did 77 kilograms at ADCC. Oh. Because Kenta went against JC Torres.
Yeah, because he went against JC Torres. Okay.
Keith is going up. We've seen Keith at 55. We've seen Keith in absolute. He fought fucking Buchecha. Like,
did he really?
Yeah, ADCC 2019 first round absolute was Buchecha.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So Keith, we've seen Keith in absolutes and heavyweight. We know he's game for it. Keith looked like he put on a bunch of size for this match. Yeah. And this was not the speed that I'm used to Keith moving in this match. So Kenta takes this match on overtime, a very, very close match in the overtime. Yeah. In the regulation, this was a different speed than I'm used to seeing from Keith. Yeah. It was much slower. Keith was on his back. He was throwing up subs, but Kenta
was passing off the
passing.
He was passing. He was just passing off the subs. And I mean, I give it to Keith because every time that Kenta would pass, it wasn't like you could hold him in like a side control position.
No.
He would definitely get his guard back and he would keep on going. And if you went by sub attempts, Keith threw up a shit ton of sub attempts throughout the match.
There was nothing, I don't think there was anything that was super deep.
There was nothing that was super deep, but Kenta didn't throw up any sub attempts.
He had the back twice.
True.
But he didn't, I don't think.
But he didn't have a.
There was anything.
He didn't have a choke or
anything across the face for either of those attempts. So in the regulation, I was really impressed with Keith's escape from the back triangle. We'll talk about that in a minute here. And Kenta's passing.
Yeah.
Like Kenta, we talked about it last week. We didn't know. Kenta's at B team now.
Yeah.
And he's been at B team. And that shows. Because Keith was looking for the legs a lot. Kenta had a really heavy pressure the entire time.
Yeah, and he just didn't give a shit.
Didn't give a shit. Yeah. Leveraged the weight. Also, it's something we're seeing a lot from guys. Traditionally, people have gotten stuck in the guard. Because Keith played like a high knee shield guard. Z guard. We've seen people get, especially at the lower weight classes, these guys are welterweight, so not as much at the lower weight classes, get stuck on that knee shield and be unable to knee cut around.
Yeah.
More and more so recently, we are seeing guys do exactly what Kenta did here, which is instead of trying to bang the knee cut so you end your knee up on the rib cage.
It's outside passing.
You do an outside pass. But it's still kind of a knee cut, but you combo that knee cut with like a Toriando variation and you just step around. And there were 4 or 5 different times in this match where we saw variations of this from Kenta. And just really forcing Krikorian to like have to retain the guard, and Kenta getting around, getting to side control, getting a little bit to north-south, but being unable to ever like go to mount. He would be forced to take the back of Krikorian. It was just very nice to see the combination passing from Kenta for being willing and able to take that outside step off of the knee cut leg around and then get back in.
And a lot of times too, it was Kenta passing off of Keith's failed submission attempt.
Yeah, Keith
so
would
he
throw
would
up
he would
some
try to
lock or an
or he would try
Leglock.
to he would try to invert to the legs, and next thing you know, Kenta's on his back.
Yeah.
So he had really good speed of, I guess, understanding what was coming after him and then being able to counter that with an attack.
Yeah.
Or maybe not an attack so much of, him going to
like a positional attack.
Yeah, a positional attack.
And so this was really a battle of two guys, like Kenta playing the positional game and Keith especially in the SOGI rule set looking for the in regulation sub, because in regulation, like, doesn't really matter. The positional game doesn't matter in the EBI style rule sets. So, and Keith is so familiar with those. He's like, I'm just going to keep throwing up subs because the positional game doesn't matter. Yeah. Kenta is much more of a positional wrestler, and so he's going to look to go through those first and then get to the back and and work that angle. Whereas Keith is like, hey man, I don't really care. So tactically, we're talking about how good the passing was. I'm also curious if Keith wasn't super concerned with the passing attempts because it's EBI and there's no penalty for, opening up and trying for something and getting passed. So there's a tactical discussion there as well. It's not just,
Yeah, and it's also, sometimes it's also what your competition strategy in general.
Yeah. We see guys employ really unconventional competition strategies in EBI style events. So in the later section of the match, Kenta, like 2 different times, gets Keith's back. Yeah. Throws a body triangle in. And it's something we've watched Krikorian get out of for years, since we've been covering since the purple belt, for 5+ years now at this point. Krikorian is really, really good at rolling through the body triangle. Yeah. In a way that not a lot of people are, because I've watched him do it for years. I've never exactly figured out kind of what makes his ability to roll through differently.
Next time you see him.
I should ask him next time I see him. Like, hey Keith, how are you doing this? Yeah. Kenta's in a really good body triangle. Keith has an ability to. Most guys when they get out of the body triangle will roll really hard to one side, get the shoulders flat to the mat, and roll through. Yeah. Keith is able to get out of the body triangle like almost still in line with you. He'll rotate his hips out. He'll slide down so that you go from being like on the middle of his hips to a little bit more under his like stomach and chest. And then he is amazing at being able to end up on top from this roll. Yeah. And he'll roll through all the way and do an extra roll and then get out and then be on top in your guard.
I know as a smaller person, this is an easier thing to do because I used to kind of do something similar. But then when I messed up my back, I can't do the twist anymore.
Same thing with me.
Because you need a flexibility twist to be able to do it.
I can't do this at all because of the spine surgery.
Yeah, and I can't. I can do it. It just I'll pay for it for a few days.
I physically can't do it anymore. But it's wild to see guys like that don't have bad backs like Keith be able to do this and be able to get there so stop my phone, it's fine.
Okay.
Be able to get there so consistently. There's 2 times in the match and the camera angle is really good to kind of see a little bit more of exactly how Krikorian is shifting his hips to be able to get out of these body triangles and, like, again, be able to get out of these positions so well. It does anything more in the regulation?
No.
It does go to overtime. Kenta gets out the first round. The first round.
He gets out of the first round really quick. He kind of goes over the top, which is the weirdest. I don't think I've ever seen anybody get out of the back by, I guess, Krikorian almost sort of stands up or like gets up to his knees.
He does the wrestler shit. He basically wrestler shucks off.
Yeah. So
we see
Kenta,
it occasionally, but usually not from the smaller guys.
Yeah.
I think these guys are 170 now, so it's
So but that basically wins the whole.
Yeah, and there's more ride time. There's more ride time at the end.
Yeah.
But the first round is kind of the determining factor. There's no subs in it, and Kenta's able to retain his welterweight title.
Yep. On ride time.
On ride time. Again, not really the way that we love to see it.
But tactically, it works.
Yeah, but tactically, and that's I wish Kenta would have called out someone. He has guys that he wants to face, but like he didn't want to on the interview. I wish that he would have called someone out because there's a bunch of guys now that I want Kenta to face. I would love Kenta to face Ash Williams because we just saw the match between Ash and Keith.
And Keith, where Keith took him out.
No, where Ash beat Keith at Grapple Fest.
Oh, yeah.
So I would really love, again, I don't think Ash is as big as Kenta because Ash is 66 and Kenta's 77.
Yeah.
Keith went up to take this, which I appreciate, but I don't know if they would be able to meet at a weight that would make sense for both guys. But again, you have Kenta. Again, all my trials winners to fight.
Yeah.
You have Ash, trials winner, Keith, trials winner, Kenta, trials winner, all within a weight class. I would love to see that matchup because the matchup with Keith at Grapplefest was such an exciting matchup. I would love to see someone put together Kenta versus Ash Williams. I think that would be a really, really exciting match.
Yeah.
And so I would love to see that made.
Okie dokie. And we move on to Fight to Win 227 in Phoenix, Arizona.
You're gonna save one for last, aren't you?
Yep.
All right.
We're going.
Fight to Win. We had Josh Cisneros versus Sam Nagai. This was a gi match.
Yeah.
For some reason, when it got announced, I thought it was a no-gi match.
Neither of us realized it was in the gi, and then today I went to watch it, and I was like, "Oh, this is in the gi."
It's a gi match. This was.
And Josh Cisneros is the no gi lightweight champion, and Sam Nagai is the gi lightweight champion.
Yes.
So
this was Cisneros trying to take Nagai's title to be both.
It didn't happen.
It didn't happen. Cisneros at the beginning of the match, I was impressed with him. This was a very, very close match. And this came down to, like, really, in the true sense of the term, a game of inches. In the Fight to Win scoring, kind of the person with the most legitimate sub attempts is the person that wins.
Yeah.
It was a very close match. You had Krikorian at the beginning of the match throwing up a really nice omoplata, kind of 2 different times in the match. He works for, like, that inverted, almost like you're going to go Kiss of the Dragon or that shoulders knee bar.
Yeah.
But he keeps the grip for Nagai and he goes omoplata there. They play legs. They play outside and inside 50-50 leg locks for a good portion of the match with both guys doing a good job of getting in and out and changing positions. Overall, it's just, I think at least, I'm not sure what you saw. It's just Nagai with a few more sub attempts on the legs.
And that was all that really.
Yeah, and
besides that, it was pretty even. Like, it was pretty even all around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a 10-minute match because it was a title fight. I see an argument for Cisneros. I see an argument for Nagai.
Yeah.
It was that close. I've watched I've watched hundreds of Fight to Win matches. I would not have liked to be in the position to score this, but again, I was talking with my wife and I. You got to beat. As much as I don't like it,
you got to beat the champion.
I like you having to beat the champ.
Yeah.
Cisneros put up a great performance, but I think Nagai definitely retains here, and that was the match. I would have liked to see them maybe open up a little more so we could see a little more positional work, but both guys really seem to be wanting to work into the legs. I just maybe would have liked to see them open up because both guys are so exciting. Yeah. It was a slower paced match than we had expected from both of them.
Well, they did allow them to reap. They just didn't allow them to heel hook.
Yeah, which I liked. And the commentary did a good job of talking about that during the match, which was good.
Because it does change the position.
Yeah, significantly.
If you can reap.
And Cisneros threw the reap over a couple of times and used it for very, very good control. Yeah. Now with this match being down on the gi, I would love to see Nagai come over and do a no-gi match with Cisneros for the 55 title. I think that hey man, I went for the gi title. Now it's your time to come over to go for the no-gi title. Yeah. Because these guys are really exciting. I think that in no-gi, I'm going to give a big edge to Cisneros, but I think it would be fun. Have we seen the guy in the gi? In no-gi?
I haven't I haven't.
He's more of a gi guy.
He's more of a gi guy.
I think we've seen him in no-gi before.
Yeah, but I don't think anything super high level.
Okay. I'm blanking. I'm just blanking.
I haven't seen him recently, let's say it that way.
I would love to see it.
I thought it was interesting to see that the Aries coach was probably he was at Brazilian Nationals. And he coached Elizabeth Clay, and then he was also coaching Cisneros because I saw him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I forget the dude's name. But it's the guy who runs Aries.
Huh? Because Aries is out of Phoenix.
Yeah,
and that's where Cisneros is from.
Yeah,
or he's trained out of now.
Yeah.
So,
but he was down in Brazil because he was with Elizabeth Clay, and then I don't know if he competed or not because I watched some of the Black Belt Masters, but I didn't watch him. I watched him at Pans.
Yeah,
completely destroyed.
Watched Lovato destroy some dudes.
Dude, Lovato looked amazing.
Yeah, go back and watch some of Lovato's highlights from Brazilian Nationals. You're just like, that dude.
It was so
has monster hands.
He also it was so simple. He didn't do anything complicated at all.
It was like everything. It was Hodger all over.
Everything
again.
Was super simple, and he just made people pay for it.
He's like, I'm Lovato. I'm just gonna get my hands across your face and do an X choke, and that's
that's all I got.
Good for you, Lovato. Jesus, out there retiring and unretiring.
What he said was he retired. He retired from ADCC and adult competition.
Okay.
So he says he's gonna go balls to the wall in the freaking Masters division.
Hey man, Lovato, I'm
doing
down
Masters,
for it, buddy.
Which probably means
TRT. Hell yeah, Lovato, you do that. I want to
It means you're rocking some.
Dude, I hope.
Rocking some.
I want to see Lovato do what Lovato does for years to come.
Dude, he is somebody that I watch just because it's super simple. You can watch it and know exactly what he's doing. And
you watch no one be able to stop it.
And no one can stop it.
It's just Lovato and his pressure is. Everyone's like, his pressure is enormous.
Yeah.
He's also cool to see him come back.
He's also a lot huger than I actually knew.
Dude, I have a picture of him at ADCC.
I forget he's an ultra heavy.
Yeah, I remember shaking his hands at ADCC, and I've done the show a long time.
Is his hand the size of your head? Is it that size?
It's close. It's it was like shaking hands with a baseball glove.
So I have a picture somewhere of me with Bigfoot Silva.
Oh wow!
And it's me and Bigfoot Silva, and his fist, because he does the fight. He
puts his fist.
His fist is the size of my head.
Yeah, Bigfoot Silva's a big dude. Yeah, Lovato was a big dude.
Yeah.
We talked to him right after he retired at ADCC from ADCC, and such super nice guy. In the 30 seconds I talked to him.
Yeah.
But. Yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy to see him still doing Masters.
Yeah, he's going to do Masters divisions and just
everyone at
people.
Masters 1 is just like, this isn't fair. So that was more Brazilieros. But let's move on to One FC. I got excited to talk about. I flew out for my wife's birthday, out to Denver, Colorado to go watch this card. Potentially Demetrius Johnson's last fight versus Marias. I'm blanking on Marias' first name. Starts with an A. Marias. They would trade back and forth. The third fight, it's not as good as the first two fights, but the rest of the card was hot fire and was really good.
Most of it.
Let's do the elephant in the room. Ty's match was versus DeRitter was definitely on the slower side.
Yeah.
You kind of had a really good breakdown when we kind of previewed it in the pre-show.
I felt like neither of them were really utilizing the cage the way they should have for takedowns.
Yeah.
They were trying takedowns, but then there are certain takedowns and there's certain things you can do offensively off the cage and that you should be using the cage in order to accomplish.
And that was what I was kind of confused about because we know Ty's a monster grappler. We've seen him use the cage. DeRitter was right now is the middleweight champion for One FC. was the light heavyweight and middleweight champion for One FC. We know, we've seen him use the cage. He knows how to use the cage. So I watched this match live, and I had a lot of questions. It never really hits the mat. There's one late Darce attempt from Tai that I think seals it for him. I think he was kind of already winning. But really, the weird thing was it didn't seem like the Ritter really wanted to take Tai down off the cage. And I thought maybe it was a tactical decision where it's like, well, your best option, Tai is an amazing grappler on the mat.
Yeah.
We saw the Ritter versus Galvao, and that was exciting, but Galvao that was a draw because that was the old rules for One FC. Tai is probably much better on the ground than the Ritter because Tai is a grappler.
Yeah.
The Ritter fights for titles in One FC in MMA. So your best option is probably just to stall him out on the feet, get him tired, lean on him, and take a close, kind of grindy hand fight decision. If you can get him down and kind of control him a little bit, but not really have to engage his guard, not really have to engage in him in ways where his grappling can kind of overwhelm you. Tactically, I was guessing that's maybe what he was looking to do, kind of play an anti-game.
Yeah.
And then Tai was stuck in this anti-game with another very big, strong, light heavyweight, middleweight guy. But neither guy really opened up aggressively.
At the last 30 seconds was the only action you really got from it.
Yeah.
Because you got Tai coming in on De Ritter once, and De Ritter grabs.
Those Dutch names are hard.
Grabs a guillotine as he takes him down, but then they pop back
immediately.
up.
Tai kind of it was a guillotine. It wasn't. They didn't even call it for a catch. It was just one of those you shoot and you have a guillotine.
Yeah, it's one
and
of
then you pop your head out.
Yeah, it was one of those you're falling, you just grab their head kind of situations.
Yeah. Which there was one of those on the card that finished.
Oh,
nice. It was a ninja choke finish on the card. I forget which match. One of the first matches of the card. There was a choke, and I was that was almost a ninja choke, front naked choke.
Yeah.
So that was neat.
And then Tai tries a Darce and
a standing Darce that was never super deep.
Yeah, De Ritter gets out of that, and then De Ritter throws up. No, Tai tries a flying scissor takedown at the end.
Kind of.
Is that what it was?
It was I couldn't.
It was
I only watched this live. I realized I had pretty good sense.
It's kind of like a flying scissor takedown. That was the only thing I could really explain it. He tries to roll into the legs at the very end.
But it was literally time was expiring.
Yeah.
So Tai gets the match. I wish we would have seen more from both guys.
Yeah.
I want to see Tai against more jiu-jitsu folk.
The other thing is De Ritter actually was training at New Wave prior to this. So there's a possibility that there was some kind of so there might have been a game plan.
Yeah, I mean,
it
was a close match.
Kind of stifle him.
Close match with Tai Ruotolo.
Yeah, he didn't really. Tai never really had the ability to open up.
Yeah, which is unfortunate because I would have liked to see that, but it happened. Tai takes the match.
Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do.
I won some money, so that was good. Nice because I bet on Tai. And then. So also on this card, we'll talk about Mikey's match in a second here because it's the match that I've been most excited to talk about all day. Sage Northcutt came back after 4 or 5 years off.
That was wild.
And hit.
First of all,
that arena. He hit a heel hook. Sage Northcutt, not known for being a grappler, known for not being great on the ground.
It was wild.
Hit a heel hook in his return after 4+ years off after getting his face caved in by Cosmo Alexander.
And he went from the anime spiky hair to the lay down hair.
Dude, I
swear,
we know Sage Northcutt.
It's the hair that gave him the heel hook.
Sage Northcutt is super strong, underratedly super strong. You watch his UFC run,
he looks like a Ken doll.
He looks like a Ken doll. He is ridiculously strong, not known for his grappling. He gets kind of dropped with a jab, and just kind of pulls guard. And I was like, oh, this is not good. He's been out for 4 years, and then immediately outside 50-50 and just starts cranking the most out of position heel hook, and he taps.
And he just rolls it.
He taps the guy.
Yeah, he just rolls. He rolls it through.
You looked at the position. I was like, oh, you're that strong where it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And I occasionally just love a really good goon technique, and Sage Northcutt did that. And then the guy behind me, we just started screaming at each other in the stands.
Did you?
About no one ever picked that. How did this happen?
Yeah.
How are we here? Oh my God, Sage Northcutt just finished a heel hook.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the highlight of the evening, but it was up there. Yeah. Me hugging a random man in the stands while we yelled about Sage Northcutt's return in a tournament.
Did your wife just look at you like you were insane?
She knows who I am. She was having a good time. She was like, she's having a good time. I'm having a good time. It was my birthday. Yeah. She was down for it. So Mikey Musumeci versus Osama Almawari.
Yep.
I'm going to call him Osama because I always kind of butcher his last name.
Okay.
This is an exciting match because this is actually someone who is very high level in jiu-jitsu, like Osama.
Yes.
IBJJF world champion, pan champion in Nogi.
Yeah.
We've seen him in Nogi. He looks really good in Nogi. From Atos, he had both Ty and Cade in his corner coming into this match. Mikey's the champion from One FC. Mikey's been looking good.
Yeah.
But we've seen Mikey recently get really into the legs.
Yeah.
And kind of solely focus on the legs. And he's talked about this in interviews, like he can get tunnel visioned. And he's talked about it in One FC, and we've seen him. He fought the Kazakhstan guy, the last outing, and completely destroyed his leg, but was never able to tap him. I watched this match, and I thought this was going to go the same way. Yeah. Mikey gives Osama the leg in a single leg, and like an effort because you have to pull guard in One FC and have control. Yeah. So that's why he does it. Because it's like, I can't just pull guard because then you can disengage. Yeah. I have to actually make an effort to have him controlled as I pull guard.
So he kind of hops on his leg.
Which I actually kind of like this rule for One FC. Because it prevents those like disengaged guard pulls where it's like, okay, the top guy has to come in.
It prevents the Kron situation. I
haven't seen that
at the UFC.
I haven't seen that fight yet.
He butt scooted across the UFC mat or the UFC cage.
I heard that he has caught some flack for it.
Who the fuck does that?
It's 1995 again.
No one does that.
So Mikey pulls and he controls, and Osama kind of tries to pull up the leg, but Mikey's in the legs. And then we have 4 or 6 minutes?
Yeah.
Of Mikey just going for Osama's legs.
Yeah.
And going for the legs. And I was talking to Rachel, my wife, while we're at it. Mikey tends to control the 50-50 with his leg instead of pointed inside for like a saddle or like a honey hole, with his leg on the outside. As a result, he has some really unorthodox leg locks that he'll do a lot. Like he has the top lock, he has the Z lock variation, he has the Mikey lock, he has a lot of like outside and hip positions that he can get to.
Yeah.
But as a result, and what we're seeing from guys that fight Mikey now is they know where he's going.
Yeah.
And because he has control on the outside of the leg, you have ability to move your knee and hip. Yeah. And so if he can panic tap guys, and he can absolutely break your leg.
But if you're knowledgeable enough to not panic tap, then you're good.
You can get out of these spots. You can go, okay, it's tight, but I can roll through.
Yeah.
You
just know that you have to know that the next attack is coming as soon as you get your knee line clear.
And you also have to know that sometimes you're not going to clear your knee line.
Yeah.
And that you just have to rotate enough.
Yeah.
And you saw Osama here for the entire beginning of the match rotate enough.
Yeah.
And it was just like Mikey going on a sub, Osama rotating his leg out.
Yeah.
Never really complete, or he did a couple times, but disengaged from the position all the way.
No, but he was also did a really good job at taking Mikey's knee and not clearing. So rather than clearing the knee line by you moving your leg, he was grabbing Mikey's top leg and pushing his knee back. And so he was clearing the leg with Mikey's legs as opposed to with his own, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
He was kind of trying to push Mikey's feet to his face and his legs towards his body so that his knee could get out and his knee could move.
Yeah.
And then he could do like a runner. Like the
runner escape.
The runner escape.
Yeah. And so that was the story of the beginning of the match. There were all of these really interesting and neat leg lock positions that Osama defended perfectly.
Yeah.
And I think he probably got a little bit like little sprain here or there, but phenomenal defense from Osama for the entire time in a way that wasn't just like him eating the leg lock. Yeah. It was him like, okay, this is tight, but I got to move and turn and rotate. Great defense. Go back and watch this match. This is what defense is going to look like in a couple of years. Yeah. Guys that have to fight Mikey are figuring it out now.
Yeah.
But this is what high-low leg defense is looking for, where it's like these are positions where subs are being applied, and we're seeing rotations of the knees and the hips in order to stay in the position and be able to counterattack and come back into your own leg locks or your own positional advancements from these positions. After all the leg lock happens, do you have anything else on leg locks before we move on?
No. Mikey just
goes, oh, right, I'm one of the best top players in the world, and I'm really good at taking the back.
Yeah.
I should just do that instead.
Yeah.
And then
he sits up
30 seconds?
Yeah, he sits up from like 50-50 or the whatever position that's considered that he was in. He gets up like you would get your 2 from a normal sweep.
He kind of settles Osama's hips down.
Yeah, he like tries a darce, and then from that darce he just takes the back.
He just passes and then takes the back and then pulls Osama over his own legs and then just traps the arm and finishes the choke.
Yeah. And
this is you were frustrated
issue.
This
my issue is this. If you are that good at taking someone's back and choking the shit out of them, why didn't you start in that position and make this match 30 seconds? You could have had a 30-second match in which you landed down, he went to pass you, you took his back, and you choked him, and it would have been over. I don't understand why you had to fuck with his legs for 5 minutes and then do this.
So this has been a couple of Mikey.
But this is my annoyance with like the common meta.
Because he's so
with
good.
the current meta.
He's so good at passing.
No, the current meta of jiu-jitsu is like, why are we playing this footy game all the time when you have a better game?
Yeah.
You have something else you can do. It's the same situation as freaking Elizabeth Clay. If she would have freaking stood up and got her sweep points, we wouldn't have had that situation.
4 times this weekend in the matches we're covering on the show this weekend. Like we saw in the Clay match, we saw in the Cisneros match, we saw it in the Mikey match.
Get up and get your points.
Yeah.
Or get up and get your position. I don't know. I'm a top player.
You'll die on these hills, Miranda.
I'll die on these hills, but it drives me insane. Just freaking win. You don't have to like show your freaking whatever gusto with legs. I don't know. I'm annoyed by the whole leg meta. I hope it just goes away soon.
You've worn out its welcome.
Anyway.
I thought it was really interesting because we've seen that in previous Mikey matches where in the Imanari match there were a lot of leg lock attempts back and forth. Eventually he goes to Imanari's back and chokes him. Yeah. And I'm blanking on the Kazakhstan's guy's name.
The guy that he like completely blew his leg out.
That was a leg lock battle the entire time, and then towards the end he tried to start to get. But
that's what I mean. If you know you can take his back and choke him out in 5 seconds, just do that. Yeah, and get it done.
It's an interesting. I'm curious, and Mikey in the post-fight interview, I appreciate it. He talks about it. He goes, "Yeah, I've been going for guys' legs a lot, and I gotta go. Fuck it. I just have to like take his back and choke him." So I appreciate that in the match because even he's talked about being tunnel vision before. I appreciate that in the match he recognized that and made the shift. Again, he was very clearly winning the leg lock exchanges. Yeah. But I do appreciate that he had the awareness in the match to go, all right, I better just like go and win. Yeah. He gets $50,000 for his efforts. I love that he retains his title, that 26-pound gold belt, and that he is getting paid. There was some kind of discussion online with like, well, who are you going to put him against? I would love to see him against Baby Shark. I think that would be an amazing match. I think people are talking about Gabriel Souza again, but I'm like, well, Gabriel Souza can't make the weight. Yeah. The Mikey's the champion for flyweight, which is 35 at One FC.
They
Baby Shark can't.
He just put up Gabriel Souza just put up a picture recently that he's getting ready to do Worlds. He's going to do Worlds, like adult Worlds. Okay. And he's training with JT Torres. Oh. He's up at Essential. Oh. I know. Which I was like, oh,
might have to make a trip.
I was like, that combination right there.
That would be
like
crazy.
The freaking war between the two of them has to be insane.
That'd be exciting.
Yeah.
So, again, I want to see. Now, moving on for Mikey, I want to see Baby Shark. I think that's the guy. I mean, Osama's amazing. Yeah. He's an IBJJF world champion. He's come over. He's Atos. He had Cade and Ty in his corner. He can't beat him. Who else are you going to throw in Nogi? Well, it's like you got to start running through your ADCC guys now. Baby Shark, Fabricio Andre, if he can make the weight. I don't know if Fabricio Andre can make the weight because it's like Mikey's at 35. Yeah. I don't know how many guys not many guys are at his level. Yeah. You know, Bruno's retired. Kaio's his coach. There's your stable of guys.
Former coach. They're not.
Yeah, but
I don't think they're still.
Your stable of.
And Kaio's retired.
Yeah, but I'm saying your stable of guys at 35 that are that good in Nogi that are at that level, even close to Mikey, is diminishing. I think the logical step now is to sign Baby Shark, put him against there versus Mikey. That's the match I want to see for Mikey. But because they brought Osama in, Osama was like a guy that I was really curious about how he would do. And he struggled with Mikey. Yeah. I think Baby Shark is that next level. You have an ADCC champion coming in versus Mikey. I think that would answer a lot of questions and it would be really cool. And it's the match I want to see. Yeah. So overall, One FC was.
How big is Cole Bate? He's a 77, isn't he?
He was at 66, but now he's bigger than me. Okay. So I judged some of his athletes at ADCC.
Okay. So I was about to say, if he could make 35, that would be.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah,
he's in speaking, because he was on my mat, and he had some guys for ADCC Costa Mesa Open that were doing both the youth divisions and doing the adult divisions. So
you told me about the
Tynan
conversations
and
you were having.
Were on my mat, and they were towards the end of the day, so they were trying to basically have their guy finish their juvenile matches and then go over. So like, hey, can we bump his match forward so that, because they were in different rooms in the building.
Yeah.
So we don't have to go between both rooms over and over again. We can kind of finish his matches out here. Is that possible? And we were like, that's reasonable. He's in two divisions in different areas. So we tried to accommodate that, as much as we could. And so I spoke to him more than most of the other coaches.
Yeah.
Other than the coaches that I needed to help with the rules.
Yeah.
I spoke to him the most because they were trying to move their fighters' matches around. Yeah. But yeah, he's bigger. He is bigger than me. I remember sitting behind him at East Coast Trials when him and Guy were watching Keith Krikorian's matches.
Yeah.
And then he was not as big as me there. Yeah. And now he is like much bigger than me.
Getting man strength.
He's 16, 17?
He might be closer to 18 by now.
Something like, he was 15 when he won trials. Okay. I think, was he 15 or 16? I thought he was 15. Anyway, he might have been 16. Yeah. But he's 17, I think. Probably getting close to 18 now. Yeah. But yeah, I don't think he can make 35. Yeah. It would be a fun match, though. I think that would be. Yeah. That would be exciting.
I'm just trying to think who like super high level could go against him.
Yeah.
And who would
they could get close to 35, because again, these are all title fights for Mikey at One FC in his grappling division, which is flyweight, but for One FC is 135. Yeah. Your stable of guys at that weight that are world class is.
And they do the water
hydration testing. Now I don't. Because they're not doing full contact, not full contact, they're not doing striking. Yeah. I don't know what the rules are for grappling. I assume that they are the same. All the weight classes for One FC have stayed the same. Yeah. So like Demetrius Johnson was flyweight, but they
you can only gain so much more weight after your weigh-in. Yeah. For your match the next day.
Because you do hydration testing. Yeah. So I'm not sure, but they're interesting matches for Mikey. I'm just not sure who they're going to find for him next. But he looked phenomenal. The whole One FC card was great. I got to watch Rotang knock out Tavares. Awesome. I got to watch Stamp knock out Alyssa, I think was her name, with a liver kick. That arena blew up.
A liver kick sucked.
Dude, it was a wild night of fights, and the One FC blew me away with their production. I think we were in the arena for like 5 hours. Did not feel like that. Awesome. It moved forward. There were a bunch of finishes. Yeah. There were a bunch of really exciting matches and fights. It was not the pacing of the UFC, because I think the last UFC I was at was McGregor versus Seaver. Okay. I think that was the last one I was at.
Some pacing for UFC cards is weird sometimes. Yeah. I think it's because of commercials and all that kind of stuff. They're just paced weird.
It was One FC they would come out, they would finish, you would interview, you'd have a couple minutes, that was and the next one would be out.
Like back in the days of Strikeforce, they were like, I liked going to Strikeforce matches because number one, they're cheaper, but number two, like, the pacing was good, and they had the fireworks, and they had like all the
they brought One FC brought everyone out, like the old Pride days where everybody lines up, and then you had all three of your champions lined up next to each other and their competitors, and it was just the whole production felt really cool. It felt like they were making an experience there. You weren't just going to watch some fights. You were like going to an event. Yeah. They walked the belt out at one point, and they had the spotlights. It was the entire arena was dark just for this light on the belt. Yeah. They did their camera pieces right in front of the cage in the arena. Yeah. And you could hear the announcers
that's awesome.
To the arena, like talk about the matches and talk about the lead up, and like
that's freaking awesome.
Yeah, it was
because at UFC you can't hear shit.
Yeah, you can't hear anything. It's just like you just have to like guess, or you can buy a radio for UFC to hear commentary if you want to, but no one does that. Yeah. For One FC, they piped it into the arena. They lit up the commentators, and they were like, "Oh, those guys right over there are speaking, and I can hear them talking about the next matchup and the previous matchup, and you're watching what you're seeing on Amazon Prime, like that to camera piece they do. Yeah. You're watching that live, almost like a stage show between the fights and before the fights and at the intermissions, and it was just the entire production was great. And again, I watched grapplers get $50,000, which doesn't happen anywhere else. So really, really happy with it overall. Phenomenal weekend for me out in Denver, Colorado. I do not know how those people train out there and live out there with 17% less oxygen. I was very tired most of the time.
You get used to it after a while.
I know you get used to it, but I did not get used to it 4 days of training. By the fourth day, it was a lot better by the fourth day. But the first 2 days, I was just laughing.
You gotta kind of get your lungs open or whatever.
Because I was out there 6 years ago, I was in much better shape. Yeah. And my back was good still. And then so it's been 6 years since I went out there.
You can get canned oxygen.
I tried to. We were at Walmart getting some like liquid IV, and I picked it up and I was like, Rachel, let's get this, and she went, no, we're not getting that. I was like, but I could. She went, no, put that back. I was like a child in the grocery store, so put that back. I was like, okay, so I put it back. But the first day I wanted it. I was like, I totally understand this now because I would stand up after like one or two every hard round, and then immediately get really lightheaded. And I was like, ooh, I am not used to being like this. Yeah. And last time I was in Denver, I was in so much better shape. I was just like a little tired and winded. I wasn't nearly as lightheaded. Also in my 30s now, and it was all that good stuff. Yeah,
you're so old.
Yeah.
So old.
But it was a great trip. Go watch One FC if they ever come back to the U.S. again. Demetrius Johnson's fight was okay, but overall, I will watch a Roteng fight any day of the week.
Sweet.
He got $100,000 bonus in the cage.
I know. I saw that part.
I was
remember
like,
all
good
that.
for you. And that arena exploded when he got the knockout. Oh. So it was a lot of fun. How was your weekend, Miranda?
I reffed. I coached some kids. And I did a bunch of rolling. So it was fun. I messed up my hand twice yesterday.
Fun,
it's fine now, but the one time on you, I did.
Yeah, you shot on me and they just
shot, but when I shot on you, I somehow like jammed all of my fingers into my own leg as I shot.
I watched you and I looked at you. You're like, ow, my hand.
I think what I did was I shot and I think I shoved my hand into the mat as I shot.
Yeah, that's what I thought you did.
I literally just
because I heard your finger go. I went, ow.
Yeah, I did. I who knows? Oh, no, do you know what I did? I went to ankle pick, and you stepped out of my ankle pick, and that's my hand smacked
into the mat. And I looked at you and I really sucked. This weekend, Zach and I are going to do Copa Virginia commentary down in Virginia.
On Saturday, right?
Yeah, for the paid bracket.
I have a wedding.
Oh, hell yeah. That sounds not as fun as what I'm doing, which is
kind of a jiu-jitsu wedding.
That's kind of cool then.
Yeah, it's jiu-jitsu people, so that's always
I'm excited. There's the brackets for Copa Maryland have been really, really exciting recently. They're paid brackets for the men's absolute division. Yeah. And so we did it in Maryland. We've done it for years, and recently we've seen a lot of like high-level guys. A lot of the standard guys are coming down because those tournaments are pretty close to them, and so we're getting to see. We saw DeAndre, and we've seen Gavin and another gentleman from standard. Christian Banghart has won a couple of them. Like a lot of local DC, Virginia guys get into these brackets, and so it's been really cool to be able to do commentary. And so we're going this weekend down to Virginia again to do commentary for Copa Virginia. You can find those matches on YouTube if you want to hear Miranda, myself, and Zach, and Josh all do commentary for Copa Virginia if you want to get a flair for how our commentary is. So
something else we do for fun.
Yeah.
And then the ADCC Open Denver is this weekend on the 13th.
Yeah. We may cover a couple matches from that. We may cover the absolute final.
It has a bunch of like really good people in it. So
yeah, it's got some crazy names in it,
and it's on Flow. All the mats are on Flow, so that's always nice.
And then in 2 weeks or a week and a half at this point, we have Who's Number One.
It's like a Thursday night. Lovato's on it. Lovato versus.
He got announced for it. I haven't seen his match yet.
Yeah, it's Lovato versus. Oh man, my brain just fell out. Okay. Well,
this is Craig Jones versus not Craig Jones.
No.
This is Pedro Mourinho versus
Morgali in the gi,
and that'll be a really exciting match. So the card looks, from the matchups that I have seen so far, the card looks phenomenal.
Yeah, they announced everybody.
Yeah, we're gonna preview that card. That will probably be the only thing we talk about next week is just a preview of all of those matchups that are coming up.
Where is this? Here we go.
Okay, so we got the card. It is Nicholas Morgali versus Pedro Mourinho, Rafael Lovato Jr. versus Elder Cruz. That is a banger matchup.
Yeah.
Alex Enriquez versus Amanda Tubby Aliquin. That's amazing. So Alex Enriquez is from Standard.
Yeah.
That should be
Alex Enriquez is from Atos in Atlanta.
Yeah, Atos Atlanta. I always want to put her from Standard. She's
You're confusing her with
Alex Wynn.
Yeah.
I saw the Alex. So that'll be a fun match with Alex Enriquez and Amanda Aliquin. Isaac Michel versus Jacob Couch at middleweight.
Jacob Couch is cutting for middleweight. Wow.
Yeah.
Because he's a big boy. Mm-hmm. He's not a middleweight.
Michel's big too.
Yeah, they're both big.
Yeah, so that'll be fun. Dante Leon versus Ruan Alvarenga. Ruan Alvarenga, who's on an ADCC.
Yeah, he's the one that who did he almost choke out? And they said it wasn't.
Gabriel Souza.
Oh yeah,
you guys all were like, you choked him out. Like, no, Gabriel Sosa got out of that choke.
It was
freaking
good. Like standing, man. They were like all the way up.
This is lightweight. So Leon's coming down to lightweight.
So I did a seminar with him at 50-50, and he was not. I mean, they must be giving him something because he was not happy about going to a lower weight class. Like he was like, I'm done with the lower weight classes. So they must have been like,
get that money.
Here's some money, and he was like, oh,
we're gonna pay you make the weight. He's like, I'll make the weight for the money. So
well, they let him weigh in the day before too. So there's that.
William Tackett versus Francisco Lowe. So Francisco Lowe, we know from that jumping armbar Oliver Taza at ADCC Nogi Worlds this last year.
Yeah.
So that's a fun match for Tackett.
I don't know which ones are in the gi and which ones are in the no-gi, or are they all gi? Because the main event's in the gi.
I think they're all no-gi because it specifically lists Nicholas Margali versus Pedro Moreno
in the gi.
Light heavyweight. Who's number one gi match?
So
everything else is just listed as a match.
My question is: so did Margali tell Nicky Rod to go F himself? Because it wasn't supposed to be Nicholas Margali versus Nicky Rod?
Was it?
I thought initially that was what was announced a long time ago, no-gi, and then somehow he pulled out, and now it's this.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Because he talks about it on the podcast.
I'm a couple weeks behind the podcast.
On their podcast about how he's going against Margali.
Oh,
and then that match got dropped, and then it was like Margali all of a sudden was like, I'm doing a gi match, you know?
Huh, I don't know.
And
I like that.
That's what it sounds like to me, but I could be completely wrong. There could have been a disconnect in there somewhere.
We haven't seen who's number one in the gi since a couple of years. So I'm amped for more gi matches for who's number one. I think it's cool that they are moving to showcase, again, a guy like Margali, who's amazing in the gi, amazing everywhere, but primarily was for years primarily only a gi guy. And Pedro Moreno looked amazing versus Giancarlo recently. It'll be fun. It'll be fun to preview this match next week.
Yeah, it'll be fun to preview that whole card.
So that's next week preview, and then the card is on a Thursday. Hopefully, I say it like it's a reality. Hopefully, it's not a 1 a.m. card for us here in the East Coast, but it probably will be.
It's a Thursday night. It's going to be like a freaking 1 o'clock in the morning bullshit.
So
and we also don't know how long the match is going to be. But I don't think Margali is like Gordon.
I wouldn't think those guys would do a 30-minute gi match. Yeah. I don't think it would probably be 10 or 15 minutes max. I think the 30-minute thing is a Gordon thing.
Yeah.
And he's Gordon, so he's able to do that. But I would prefer everyone else have 10 or 15 minutes, so that would be.
I would prefer everyone has that, not just King Gordon doing what he wants.
Yeah.
But
So that'll be fun. We'll preview that this coming week. Anything else, Miranda?
No, I think that's it.
All right. As always on the show, I'm your host, Maine. So my co-host,
Miranda.
And we have the Grappling Rerun. So Matt, what it is, stay safe. If you like the show, please consider sharing it on Facebook with the folks at your gym. It's the best way that we grow the show, and we really appreciate it. You can reach out to us on email.
We also have Instagram. We have Facebook. We have Twitter. We have Google+.
Until that shuts down.
We have a website.
If you have an event you would like to have us cover, please let us know. If you have a name, like most people do, and you'd like to have us stop butchering it,
let us know.
Reach out to us. The show is also available on YouTube, Spotify, in addition to iTunes and every other podcast service. We very much appreciate your time, and thank you.